Hi guys, White Warlock here. This is going to be the first video on builds for Path of Exile 2 and some theory crafting. Obviously we don't know everything yet, but the reveal of all the ascendancies definitely helped and yeah, helped me starting to think about where I want to begin with my first character. I'm still deciding between the Stormweaver or the Monk and either of the two monk classes. Not sure about that one yet. But for the Stormweaver, I definitely already have an idea going, especially because it's very flexible, and I'll talk about why it's very flexible. So first, every Ascendancy has been revealed, has been leaked, and then Palvexel just decided to GG just decided to show us all the Ascendancy, so that's nice. And the first one I want to talk about in this what the first video is the Stormweaver, because it's a very good spellcaster class and spellcaster ascendancy, and yeah, that's something I like the most in PoE 1, so why not in PoE 2? So um, when I look at this ascendancy and what I kind of want to do, I want to try arcane surge maybe, because mana regeneration is very very needed in Path of Exile 2 compared to Path of Exile 1, according to those who've already played it. And I want to try that with Archmage and a lightning spell. So obviously you don't need a lightning spell for Archmage, especially if you can stack mana so that it doesn't really matter what spell you use. But it's just nice to have just a pure lightning skill, so the base damage of the lightning skill also gets buffed by your added just extra lightning damage you get on your gear or on the passive tree. So why the build is, or well, the build, the idea or the theory craft is very flexible is it because it has no main skill. You can just play whatever lightning skill you want, or maybe even non-lightning skill, but especially lightning skills you want. And I think a setup like this that I'm gonna show you is the most is the easiest way to facilitate that with the knowledge that we have. Obviously, the thing we're missing most is for Stormweaver is wands, like what wands exists. Because right now we don't have that much knowledge on it. I'll show you, like we have 6 wands, one of which is unique. So we don't have any unique wands. We don't really know what we can get. And like all these wands that the sorceress gets are just grand skills. The other thing I'm thinking about is just playing with scepters anyways, just ignoring the wands unless the granting the skill it grants is good enough. Obviously depending a lot on the modifiers that can be crafted and put on wands. If those are good enough, like +3 or +5 the level of all lightning skills, for example, then you want to keep the wands. Maybe if you have added lightning damage or increased lightning damage, which is way higher on wands than on scepters, then you want to keep the wands, obviously. But otherwise, the good thing about scepters is that it grants 100 extra spirit, and I think that's going to be pretty important for the build, because what we kind of want to do is we want to use the good parts about the ascendancy, one of which is the arcane surge package, which are 8 and 9 here. One you always have arcane surge, which grants you 10% more cast speed and 20% more mana regeneration, and then you have force of will, which grants 1% increased effect of that arcane surge on you per 15 maximum mana. So we want to stack mana, and while we are stacking mana, we're gonna use Archmage to get more lightning damage, and Mind over Matter to have a extra health pool, right? Basically, and if mana sustain is hard in PoE 2, then Arcane Surge scaling will definitely help. Obviously, if it's not, if it's very easy for some reason, maybe because of a very good unique or because of a broken interaction, then you don't need 8 and 9. with like constant gale and force of will, and you can just grab other things on the Ascendancy. Like there are other things that are also good, especially because we don't really know how good Tempest Collar is, or more specifically the skill that it grants, Elemental Storm, because it triggers on critical hit with spells. Well, we want to crit with spells because that's just more damage, right? Why not? But if the cooldown, for example, on this trigger is very low and you can really boost the damage of Elemental Storm, then you kind of want you want both 2 and 3. If it's like good enough for a few triggers, then maybe you only care about 2, and if it's not good at all, then you can't take 2 and 3, and that's another few ascendancy points which would make the Stormweaver a bad ascendancy, right? So let me talk about like what makes a sorceress, or at least a Stormweaver, and that is most likely Archmage with like the mana buffs again. Archmage seems really strong, especially if you can stack a lot of mana. That 5% of damage as lightning damage for every uh, 100 maximum mana you have seems really good. Obviously, you don't need to combine this with mana, but sorry, with mana with lightning skills, but lightning skills are fun. Most of like uh, ball lightning looks really fun to use, and arc, for example, is obviously a Path of Exile 1 classic, so maybe that is something we can try out in Path of Exile 2 as well. The main thing, though, I think I'm going to be using on literally every character, doesn't matter what character I'm going to start, is these six spells, and that's Blasphemy. So basically, you have an curse armor, kind of like the same as in PoE 1, but then you have you reserve spirit instead of mana, so that's better because then you can just use your full mana pool for mind over matter. And the curses I want to put into that blasphemy are enfeeble and temporal chains. Temporal chains isn't showing on here, but I can show you what it does. It's just this very big slow. They're slowed by 34%, and this is at temporal chains level 11. So at level 20 it will be even higher. And then you can buff it with heightened curse to give it more slow effect. And then I'm not sure if encumbrance will work because like on the PoEDB doesn't show cost multiplier, but I'm assuming it will. Then it's increased again with 30%. So the slowing of your of the bosses and the monsters basically reduces their damage dealt, and then Feeble directly reduces their damage dealt. Also, this is level 3, so cursed unique enemies would deal 60% less damage only at level 3. Level 20 will be much higher, and it will also be buffed by heightened curse. And there's probably going to be curse effect on the tree, so you're going to want to do that to like get a lot more defenses from Enfeeble and Temporal Change. So this is one of the main ways you can just get your defenses sorted, or at least buffed a lot in basically every class, as long as you have the spirit needed. The base spirit cost will be 60 from the Enfeeble and Temporal Change. That's just the basic. Then it will be doubled, so that would be yes 120, and then we don't know if encumbrance adds anything, so we're not sure about that. And then clarity adds another 12, so that would be so 60, 120 plus 12 is 132. And if we can believe the community wiki DB, we start with 0, which we know we start at 0, but if we can get every act, boss, or quest item, we go to 180, and then we need a little bit of spirit to also get Archmage, because that reserves 100 spirit, and if we can support Archmage without and like increasing the cost by too much, then we can use this complete blasphemy setup with an Archmage setup to boost our damage. Then I do have 2 active skills here, Lightning Storm and Orb of Storms. But you'll probably only be using one of the 2. but they're not the active skills you're going to use most likely, but they are here to support the Ascendancy and to offer more damage. So I think you can use either of them to try, and this depends kind of on how they act, like in the game, to try and get the enemies, the monsters, and the bosses to get shocked. So you want to support them with lightning exposure, so that the shocks inflict lightning exposure, so they get so they deal like they get dealt more damage because their resistance is lower, and you want the chance to shock as high as possible. For Orb of Storms, if you look at the PoEDB, it doesn't say that it has a chance to shock, but it will naturally shock. But if that chance is not high enough, maybe you can just use shock chance instead. You'll probably have room for the gem anyways, so this is like basically free, right? So why not? And then 100% increased chance to shock, and then the lightning exposure. So just this one of the two skills, or maybe a different skill. Obviously, this is just the two that seemed the easiest to like trigger. But Orb of Storm is probably the best if you're actually using a lightning skill, because it will fire a bolt every time when you use one. So if you have a high enough cast speed, and obviously we're trying to have a very high cast speed because we get at least 10% more, and if we have a lot of mana, maybe like 30, 40, maybe even 50% more cast speed. If you have a shit ton of mana, you can trigger the Orb of Storms a lot, right? Now the other like Ascendancy node I will definitely take is Strike Twice. So this makes it so that targets can be affected by two of your shocks at the same time. So this would let's like this would double the damage output that the shock will grant you, right? So that's amazing, even more damage. And yeah, so you'll definitely take that one. And then for the last Ascendancy node, it's a little bit like maybe it's probably either one or two. One just grants like 20% reduced resistances after the exposure, right? Because we are gonna um, expose the enemies with lightning exposure, but we because monsters or lightning resistance or monsters resistance in general cannot go below zero. Maybe Scouring Winds is just not good except against bosses, and maybe then it's not worth it. And maybe Tempest Caller itself is really good. Otherwise, maybe Shaper of Storms, but that's probably just not needed in a lightning damage build only, right? Especially if we can just set up the shocks with Orb of Storm or Lightning Storm. So Tempest Caller is also maybe if Elemental Storm is good enough. And obviously with Battle of Exile 2, when you get a skill from your Ascendancy, you can just give it support gem. So we can also just support it with Tempest Caller and maybe get like a cast on crit, but then for spells. And it also gets buffed by Archmage, so you know, it will deal damage, but it's just how big is that cooldown? That is the real like big important part. So this is the first like build idea. It's obviously very broad. I don't have a main skill yet because it's kind of like what feels the best and what looks the best, because I'm definitely planning on getting some nice microtransactions if I don't already have them from the PoE1 builds. So yeah, I hope you guys liked it, and let me know what you are planning to play in 2 days, right? Because it's coming very soon. So yeah, I hope you'll enjoy the game with me, and I will see you guys later.